שמע שיר חדש ובנענע.
Welcome to a brand new year of Parshas HaShavua. It's a thrill to be back with you after a long hiatus since Yom Kippur, before Yom Kippur. And if you recall, in the last year, we noted how the Yom Kippur that we passed had a tremendous significance to it, and the events leading up to it can now be viewed in the context in our rear view mirror as we take a look back at what has been a Tishrey for the ages, as we segue between Parshas Bereshis and now this week we enter the Teva. We're going from the Sukkah to the Teva, and we're going to talk about what has happened and what that transition looks like, because we say Tov achris davar mirei shisai. Everything that is good comes from its origin. So the good of the month of Tishrey is what's going to take us through this year, a year with perhaps great challenges, but also great surprising miracles. So let's analyze in retrospect, looking back at what was a Tishrey that may have been the most consequential one, certainly since 1973, without doubt, and in the Yom Kippur War, but for Israel and for the world. But perhaps we'll be able to cull from it some ideas that we're going to take with us as we march forward fearlessly into Tav Shin Pei Vav, which is a year that we have long awaited, and a year that there may be surprises in store that we could not possibly anticipate, but that the events of Tishrey may give us an inkling of what's to come. Because as the Vilna Gaon says, inside the word Bereshit is contained all of the lessons of the Torah. In fact, the great Moroccan Torah sage, the Yaacov, wrote a complete sefer making with Roshei Tevos of the word Bereshit in hundreds of different permutations, each of which teaching a massive lesson of Torah. And this is the way of the sages. Two things, I would say, as we emerge out of Sukkot into Parshas Bereshis because of Simchas Torah, and now we go forward into Parshas Noach. There's an agenda. So I want to, in order to do a proper overview, I want to take the agenda a piece at a time. Okay, so let's backtrack to Hoshana Rabbah. We know that Hoshana Rabbah is the day of judgment, but where we receive our kvitlach, which means that basically our allocations or our expectations for the year ahead, we get actually the angels that are assigned by Kodesh Baruch Hu to govern his will in this world are given this information, and mechanics are set into place in which this hashkacha will then begin to unfold. Of course, what's incredible about the Jewish people that at any moment, Tzom Kol Mamon can overturn, which is why the Jewish people have a general appeal that goes into play, that even on Hoshana Rabbah, where the quote-unquote final judgment is rendered, it's not the final judgment. Why is that? Because our tzaddikim and our chachamim have been able, through their tfilos and through their tshuva and through their zechia ledoros, what they've done, lezako says harabim, to get us a deferment to the very last day of Hanukkah, which is, of course, a very blessed time for the Jewish people. So we can only anticipate that the events that were set into motion on Hoshana Rabbah, especially, will have great impact as we move forward to the sof of this year's good kvittel, as it were, which will be our appeal state, which is till Zos Chanukah. And we should be encouraged that whatever might be difficult, we do have a chance. The Jewish people always has a chance, even after Zos Chanukah, but to set a pattern for the year, we are still in the stages of molding that. And there's many wonderful things that we can work with. Kitov, a lot of kitov material that we can anticipate. First and foremost, On Hoshana Rabbah, we is the day which we finalize reading about the 70 parim, the 70 bulls that are brought on the Chag of Sukkot that are assigned as a zichut or a kapara or in some cases a tikkun of the 70 nations. We have a Masorah that there's 70 nations, and according to Vilna Gaon, after the flood, after the Mabul, where much of the original members of the world were wiped out, and then the families of Shais primarily, right, are the ones who are Nishar, not even all of them, only Noach and his wife and his children. So the recast the concept of Shivim Umos in a higher level, which would eventually become the families of Yishmael and the families of Esav. In other words, descendants of Avram Avinu. So in other words, the world has, how shall I say, been upgraded in a sense that the chance given to mankind of redemption has been enhanced by virtue of us escaping the harsh judgment of the generations of the Mabul, those 10 generations. And now we are, and certainly from the generations of Cain and Hevel, which were the first 10 generations. And now we're in that third revolution, which began with Avram Avinu. So Noach represented the stage 2 of this. So when you say Bereshis Noach, what we're really doing is we're actually catapulting us forward 20 generations, 10 generations from Adam ad Noach, which includes the Mabul, and then of course Noach going forward 10 generations until the emergence of Avram Avinu, which happens at the end of this week's Parsha, which is very exciting. Avram is already on the scene. So on that day of Hoshana Rabbah, the final 7, which we have here is 7 parim, 7 left, because we began that journey, okay, on the 13 parim, 13 on the first day, 12 on the second day. That's already 25, okay, and then 11 on the third day. That's already 36, right? We're already halfway there. And Vilna Gaon was quick to note that as the 70 nation concept evolved forward, and the nations of Esav and Yishmael are the ones who now occupy those spaces, they are evenly divided, 35 and 35. And there's a signal for it in the reading of Hoshana Rabbah itself. How's that? Because it varies between mentioning the parim being accompanied by other parts of the sacrifice, elim, kvasim, rams, and sheep, but also a seir chatas, a goat that is a chatas. And the seir is generally a reference to Esav. But when we add the appendage, seir izim, okay, that is a reference to Yishmael. So if you'll note, the very first day of judgment, we go straight for Yishmael. In other words, you have 13 parim, right? And it says there, seir izim echad chatat. So Yishmael, who's closest to us, is actually knocked out day 1 of Sukkot, but he's completely wiped out on day 6, because the 7th day, which is Hoshana Rabbah, says only Seir Lechatas, which is a reference to Esav, the remnant of Esav, which is very likely Amalek, the last part of Esav to hold on in its subjugation of the Jewish people is Amalek, of course, but Yishmael is gone by the day before, which is the 6th day of Sukkot. Gone. Isn't it interesting that in the day after, Yishmael's forces or energies were diminished, corrected, turned in a positive direction, whichever way you want to look at it, the Chatufim, the hostages, emerged, because the power of Esav diminished out completely in terms of Tafshin Pei Vav energy anyway, on the day before Hoshana Rabbah. And who dominated the day of Hoshana Rabbah? The Seir Chatas, the Americans. That was the day that Donald J. Trump, president of the United States of America and leader of the erstwhile world of Esav, some suggest he's a Gilgal of Esav, he's got the hair for it anyway, right? Came to Yerushalayim Ir Kodesh and said incredible, incredible things to honor Hashem and to honor the Jewish people and to honor Yerushalayim, which is unheard of, unprecedented in history. Even though the United Kingdom was helpful to the Jewish people to whatever extent that they were in trying to found a Jewish homeland, starting already in the beginning of the 20th century, but we know that ultimately Chesed Le'umim Chatat, and England led the charge together with Saudi Arabia, as we noted, on Erev Rosh Hashanah to renounce the Jewish state and to declare it a Palestinian state. When I mean it, I'm talking about the biblical homelands, Hebron, Shechem, Yerushalayim, okay, the heartland of the Jewish people, those holy cities. They would say, no, it does not belong to the Jewish people. They officially renounced whatever support that they had offered. And with them, the forces of Yisrael. But then came Hoshana Rabbah and the historic day at the Knesset, which I think really was historic, but even more importantly, the release of the hostages that's followed. Now, there are those who suggest that it's a very, very partial victory because of the fact that many of the Mesim have not been returned. And I certainly feel that way. And I was of the personal opinion that nothing should be celebrated until that. And it was wrong of America to celebrate its great victory. And by the way, today, as we speak right now, the Vice President of the United States is on his way. He's being rodef acharei Netanyahu and the rest of Israel for further concessions. But let's hope that Hashem will stymie their plans, and that the nations of the Western Europe have already declared their main intention, which is so fascinating. It's just fascinating. What's their main intention? That there should be a Palestinian police force governing Gaza. Let me translate that into English. No Jewish jurisdiction over any part of the Holy Land that we can get out of their hands. That they're foolish enough to surrender to us. We'll gladly take it. And we'll take everything else if you don't give it to us, which sets an incredible stage which is happening. Because, again, as we went through that day of Hoshana Rabbah, some suggest it was a partial thing. But some suggest, as I alluded to earlier, that among them are of Kessin, who's a voice that I respect and listen to, one of my teachers. He claims that it is the end of the judgment of Esav. In other words, if you look at Hoshana Rabbah Bigadol, its purpose is the judgment of the world. And he said, and in the case of judgment of the world, there's the not international court of justice, but the divine court of justice, which is a lot more good and a lot more credible, frankly, and it's not bent on evil. So the divine justice court, as Rav Chesson explains, wants fairness, wants to give everybody their due. And if anyone has harmed anyone else, or anybody has a legitimate claim or caused suffering to others, they'll get their due. And we know the Zohar Kodesh tells us that that Yishmael put in a claim for the land of Israel, saying that they are the children of Abraham and that they deserve his inheritance, which included Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem said to them, you have a claim, but only a partial claim. And when the Jewish people are not in the land, because I decree that they go to Golus, in that event, I will give you the possession of the land of Israel, but it will be limited to 1,000 years. Limited 1,000 years. Now, where were those 1,000 years? Those 1,000 years actually began in 622 with the conquest of Eretz Yisrael by the beginnings of then early emerging religion of Islam, and continued till the era of the Ottoman Turks conquering the land, which was approximately 1518 that was taken over. Okay. And so you see that period of time, which was there was a bit of an overlap, but that period of time marked the end of the Islamic domination, and now they had to share it, although there was Islam as a religion, but not Yishmael genetically as the Arab folks. Now, we know Yishmael's residence is Har Paran. Even at the end of days, when Moshe gave the bracha for Zosa bracha, Hashem said he gave the Torah to Klal Yisrael, Hofia mihar Paran. One of the places Hashem had offered the Torah previously to the two major protagonists, to Esav and Yishmael, and they both rejected it. That Hofia Mahar Paran means that's the Midbar Paran, which is near Egypt, where basically it's the beginning of Egypt, where Yishmael lives. Primarily, Egypt is Yishmael. Yishmael is Egypt. His mother is Hagar, was the princess of Egypt. He took a wife from Egypt. Egypt is the primary Arab country. In addition to that, there's Syria and Saudi Arabia and all those other countries to the east. If you want to speak, who is an Arab, a real Arab, okay, it's Egypt and then the countries associated. There was a time right before the 67 war that Egypt made something called the United Arab Republic, in which they joined forces with Syria. So you see, Syria is prime Yishmael territory, but the Iker is Midbar Paran and Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's their place. Isn't it interesting that Mitzrayim is right up on the border of the conflict that we're currently talking about, and is rearing its militaristic head and wants control over the situation in Gaza completely, and has been in control of the situation in Gaza in terms of influencing it by allowing smuggling, allowing military buildup, allowing the building of all the horrific tunnels. So they've been no friend of the Jews, no friend of Israel. Ostensibly, they have a peace agreement, but that's because of the diminishing of the power of Esav. They have been diminished since the British threw off the yoke completely of any Islamic country over Eretz Yisrael, and it continues to diminish throughout that time since the founding of the State of Israel and the various succession of wars, 1967, even 73, there was their final attempt, until Sadat got it that he's not going to be successful, so he went to treachery in order to get back all of the territory that he coveted, pretty much. And but ultimately they knew that they could not conquer Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Canaan. They could have Mitzrayim, they could have Midbar Paran, but Eretz Canaan could no longer, the Yerushas Avinu is no longer viable for them. And of course, the last ones to learn this lesson have been the countries which Hashem used these last 2 years to beat them mercilessly, including Gaza, including Iran, including Lebanon, including Syria, and of course, to a lesser extent, Yemen, and its various, even Qatar to a certain extent. For all those who yet still believe that Yishmael will have a hand on Israel, if they have that foolish idea that has already been taken away from them, then they will suffer the consequences. However, there are those who still persist and will persist. And how Hashem will deal with them, I think we saw a bit on Hoshana Rabbah, of a sense of their being forced to capitulate under the hand of Esav, who's the last man standing on Hoshana Rabbah itself. Trump's visit to Yerushalayim, the release of the Chatufim, that was another affirmation that no matter how hard the voices of hatred are, and there are two different voices. One is the voice of the Arabs who say, you stole our land, of course, that they have the claim of Yerushas Avinu, which has expired many, many, many years ago. And the ones who are Amalek voices who wish to destroy the Jewish people. And if they can't destroy them physically, they'll destroy them reputation-wise and justify their eradication by calling them genocidal. That the claim of genocide is actually the best that Amalek can do right now. They can't do what Hitler did. They can't take Jews and put them in the crematoria. But they can take the reputation of the Jewish people, the history of the Jewish people, the legitimacy of the Jewish people, the reputation of the Jewish people, and burn it. And that's what they have done, and that's what they continue to do. And it is that war it remains the unfinished war of Amalek in our day. So you have to bifurcate, and you have to make a dichotomy here, which is davar vehipucho. That's how our world works. We have the reality and the opposite of the reality, and they coexist, just like a human being has an neshama and a guf. Impossible, but somehow it works. What is the dichotomy? The dichotomy is that from Hoshana Rabbah forward, we saw that Yishmael is defeated, and that their power is minimal, and their threat is minimal, or at least minimized, and not successful. They really, really had a plan to conquer and destroy the state of Israel. They really, really believed it in their heart and soul. Sinwar believed it. Nasrallah believed it. The Ayatollahs from Iran believed it, and the Houthis believe it, and many others. But I don't know that they believe it anymore. In fact, things will have to change dramatically for them to reclaim that last vestige of hope, and I don't believe it will happen. I think we're past that point. But on the other hand, the voice of Amalek is as strong as ever. So how can that be? Yishmael is rising in the west and setting in the east. Follow me? Its dominion over Eretz Yisrael, as of Hoshana Rabbah of this year, has really, really at the culmination of a 2-year imprisonment, just like Yosef Atzadik was imprisoned for 2 years, so too the Chatufim were imprisoned for 2 years. And when they came out, their light shone throughout the land of Egypt. This is what's very important, that what happened to the Chatufim, for all the evil that was done to them, which is beyond belief, their souls have been so purified that, according to the Yanuka anyway, who was a very famous Rav, not up and coming, but one of the young stars of Hashpa'ah, of Tshuva in the Tshuva world today, who had direct connection to the Chatufim in many ways and advised some of the families. He said to them, because what you suffered of this great darkness, literally like Yosef, underground in a bore, it's a perfect analogy, in a bore that you'll never get out alive. That's what Rabbi Arish said. Rabbi Shalom Arish would say, Yosef was put into a bore never to get out, and yet he was not broken. He was not broken. If anything, his spirit evolved and shone brighter. The souls of the Chatufim, especially the ones that are still alive, are great, great lights right now. And I've been sent a number of stories about how these young people, albeit no yeshiva education, they weren't raised in anything, but their souls burn with an emunah and a devekus to Hashem. That's precisely what Hashem wants from us in this generation, and the generation which we require more than anything else, emunah, and more emunah, and more emunah. And these Chatufim stories, whether they passed or whether they are with us, is just beginning. Okay. So similarly, I'll mention another great sorrow that happened was the loss of Rabbi Moshe Hauer, executive vice president of the Orthodox Union, a choshev, a rav from Baltimore. I personally am acquainted with his family. His brother-in-law and his sister are some of my dearest friends. I've known and observed him for close to 40 years. And it's a massive loss for American Jewish community. Massive. And of course, that took place when? Literally on Shmini Atzeres, the day after Hoshana Rabbah. So here we have the davar behipucho. Even though there's great simcha that occurred right on Hoshana Rabbah, at the same time there was great tragedy in Chutz La'aretz. Follow me. Eretz Yisrael, the powers of evil are diminishing. In Chutz La'aretz, they're growing. And on the table is the election next month or within 30 days of Mayor Mamdani of New York, who literally says that the Jewish people are guilty of genocide and would arrest the Prime Minister of Israel, as did our good friends Canada, so much for the British Empire, and New York City. British Empire, New York City. These were the places where the Jewish people could thrive in freedom, right? England as opposed to Germany, Canada. Man, how many Holocaust survivors fled to Canada, to Montreal? Which is where Howard was from, by the way. How many people from the Holocaust fled to Australia and to South Africa and the entire empire of the British Empire? And now they have turned. Australia has turned. Canada has turned. England has already turned, but has become the leader of the voices of hatred, which is the voice literally of Amalek, literally the voice of Amalek, which calls for the destruction of Jewish people on moral grounds. Always Amalek will say, I'm not saying this because I'm an anti-Semite. No, no, no. I love Jews. But Israel has blood on its hands. The Jewish people have blood on their hands. This has been the call, the cry of Amalek throughout the ages. Whether it's money, which is damim or dam, stealing our livelihood, number one, or stealing our children, number two, it's always the same horrific claim. Nothing has changed. Okay. When people of the hypnotized woke left run around saying bad things about Israel, inevitably what they say is Israel kills children in Gaza. This is the same blood libel that has been gone on since the times of the founding of Christianity. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. It's the same cry, and we have to understand that they don't even themselves understand what it's all about. Okay, but let's see if we can explain it. So far, what we noted to this point was as we merged out of Sukkot, we came davar v'hipucha. We had a mixed bag. On the one hand, the return. On the other hand, only the partial return, because the Mesim did not come back. And then a horrific loss, coupled with that disappointment, and the resumption of hostilities in Gaza almost immediately. So it was a portend of great things to come, but at the same time, here we are in dealing in the day-to-day. Chatufim need to be returned. Gaza needs to the threat in Gaza needs to be expelled completely. Ultimately, it needs to be recaptured and resettled. But this is beyond the conception of any person in the world, even Mr. Trump, and maybe not. And so we wait. So we wait for the good things to continue to unfold as God's will unfold in the world. Now, to that end, I'm going to mention something that I said over Sukkot, which I believe to be on the first night of Sukkot, which I believe to again set the stage for Bereshis. Number one, I asked the question, why is it that when it comes to the two mitzvahs of the holiday of Sukkot that we passed, the lulav and esrog on the one hand and the sukkah on the other hand, they seem to be diametrically opposite? What does that mean? A lulav and an esrog, one is medaktek kechut hasara. We are really careful. If you have a black dot on the top third of your esrog, you go running to a posek to ask him if it's kosher. You can return it to the sale that you got. If a rabbi writes you a note, there was a black dot. No, I'm not taking it. And if a slight imperfection to the pitom or any little bit of it missing, we're thrown into a tizzy. Is this kosher or not? On top of the lulav, the top two leaves that come together, you can even barely see them. Are they closed or are they open? And you must look with a magnifying glass if there's any split between them, which is interesting because it kind of represents the spinal column. And any split in the spinal column is deadly. You better look pretty carefully, and we do. And some, like I prefer, want to have it closed over with that reddish colored whatever it might be that closes it up. Oh, Chas v'shalom should be open. And similarly, we worry, is it really Mishulish? Is it really, are the three Hadassim leaves exactly on the same line? That's how we deal with a Lulav and Esrog. Quite the opposite is how we deal with the Sukkah. The Sukkah, we have incredible leniency. Okay, mostly from Chazal, drushes from the Torah, and the rest from Halacha Moshe Sinai. For example, Sukkot, Sukkot. How many walls? Today's Daf Yomi, as a matter of fact. How many walls in a sukkah? Well, logically 4, right? No. Only 3. And the third one doesn't have to be more than a tefach. That's basically 2 walls and a shtickle nothing. So it's 2 walls. Whoever heard of a house with 2 walls? 2 and a shtickle wall. No such thing. Whoever heard of a house where if the wall is hanging down but doesn't really go to the ground, but at least has 10 tvachim coming down, we say ke'ilu it reached the ground. But it didn't reach the ground. So what are you making up stories? No. This is the halacha. It's called good achas and good asik. It can go down. It can go up from the bottom. Oh, and by the way, if there's a hole in the schach, which is supposed to be covering us, right? As long as it's not 12 to 18 inches, which is what 3 tvachim to a tefach could be, let's say 4 to 6 inches, so 3 tvachim could be what, 12 to 18. That's a lot of space. It's good. It's okay. It's good. Oh, and by the way, if the wall doesn't touch the next wall, but it doesn't go that far away, we'll consider it. That's called love. It's close enough. It's close amos. Oh, and by the way, if you have cement going over the top of your sukkah, which is so not kosher, but as long as it's not four amos, an amos a 1.5 feet, that's like 6 feet. As long as it's only 6 feet worth of concrete, we'll still consider it as if the wall's bent. The wall's bent, but the wall's not bent. So why are you saying it's bent? Halacha Moshe Sinai. What's going on? How could it be that the 2 most important mitzvahs of the brand new year that Hashem gives us between Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot, where we get a chance to do tshuva, we run from Yom Kippur and we start building our sukkah immediately, and we run and we get, and yet it's 2 mitzvahs that couldn't be possibly polar opposites. The Lulav and Esrog, ultra strict. The sukkah Kimat doesn't exist. And the answer, I believe, is if you look at the pasuk, where this is, or it's in the same pasuk. It says, Laman, it says, Velakachtem lachem b'yom harishon, pre-Eitz Hadar. Take for yourself a little bit esrog. Lachem, each and every individual Jew, or Jewess, if she wants, requires their own lulav and esrog. I can't say, this guy's got, the chazan bought the shul bought a beautiful lulav and esrog. We gave it to the chazan, and he's going to shake, and it's all good. No, you've got to buy your own lulav and esrog. Well, let's say one guy, a big gvir, builds a sukkah for the whole community, and they're all going to eat there. Is that a problem? And he's going to pay for all the meals. Oh, that's great. I didn't lift a finger. This guy built a big sukkah. He's feeding me all the meals. I got to show up. It's great. Did I get any less of a mitzvah than that gvir? No. Why? Because the Torah says, Lakachtem lachem b'yom harishon means, look at yourself. View yourself. After all, what does the esrog represent? According to Chazal, it's the human form. The esrog is our heart. The hadasim are our eyes. The arubas are our lips. The spinal column is our thinking, our mindset, our mood. There's always room to grow. It's always worth inspecting, because you know what? You can't be happy with your progress and say, well, I did enough tshuva. I'm going to stop here, take a break. There's always more in growth. You have to keep growing. You have to keep improving. Whatever level you reach, there's more to go. Lakachtem lachem b'yom rishon. Your tshuva is not done. You can't say, I'm finishing doing tshuva now, and I'll do tshuva next year. I can pick it up, where I left off. No, it's every day. Become better. Become a better person. A bigger lamdan. A better davener. A better bal chesed. A better person. A better bal midos. A better yiras shamayim. A better husband, spouse, friend, brother, sister, mother. There's always more. But by Sukkot it says, Kol Ezrach Yisrael Yishbu Basukos. All these citizens of the land of Israel. My son has a great imitation of Netanyahu. He goes, Ezachei Yisrael. He always starts with that. Citizens of Israel. Yes, citizens of Israel. Kol Ezrach Yisrael. The entire Jewish nation, one sukkah. And that's, if you're going to make all the Jewish people come under one sukkah, you better find a way to look for what's there and not at what's not there. You're going to have to accentuate what is good and look away from what's missing. You cannot take the inventories of other people and say, well, this person is not this, is not that. They're this lacking and this part of them missing. Forget about it. We need Kol Ezrach Yisrael. You have to look at them with a kind eye. Look away at what's missing. Look at only what is there and what is even in potential. That's the difference. So again, davar v'hipucho, it's true, but it's the opposite as well. When it comes to yourself, you can demand excellence. When you come to others, acceptance, love, sympathy, acceptance, and inclusion. That's the difference. But this year, I took it a step further. Look at the pasuk a little further. The pasuk says, Samachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. The Lulav and Esrog, you have joy in front of Hashem. By Sukkot, it says, L'man yedu doraseichem k'besukkos hoshaftis b'nei Yisrael. You should teach the generations that I put the Jewish people in Sukkot. Now let's analyze this for a second. What's so happy about the Lulav and Esrog? Why am I being happy with a Lulav and Esrog? What's the joy in it? Okay, what's the simcha? I could say the sukkah is a simcha. I like sitting in the sukkah. It's geschmack. I have a nice fan. I can relax there. I can learn. I can eat. I can sleep. That's happy. And Lulav and Esrog, I make myself crazy to find that it's perfect. That's so perfect. Why is that the tool of happiness? And why is it so important that we know that when we left Mitzrayim, Hashem put us in sukkos? First of all, Hashem has done miracles for the Jewish people throughout the ages. He fed us man for 40 years. We don't go and make a holiday out of it. Okay? Well, you could say Parshas Aman is every day of a person's life. But still, we don't see a holiday because I served you man, therefore we have Monday. That's not the origin of, maybe it is. Money, if you ever thought about it that way. So many. Hashem caused the sun to stand still for Yehoshua. Where's the Yontif? Okay. Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay, was a great, great, great miracle. Okay. Oh, so we want to say we have Shri Shal Pesach. Maybe. But, Sukkot, Hushafti, but that's just what happened. It's not, why? Man yedu darei seichem. You have to teach this. It's like the Seder night. That's, and the lad rises and recites the Fir Kashis to his father. You have to teach the next generation. What are we teaching? We sat in a sukkah, okay. So what? Here's what I think it means. When Akash Baruch Hu put us in the midbar, there was no chance for survival. There was sun that would kill you from its own heat. There's the scorpions and snakes and who knows what other wild beasts. There's nothing to eat and there's nothing to drink. How long are you going to survive there? How long? For any of you who have ever hiked around Sinai, it's mountain after mountain after mountain after mountain. I remember when I was a youngster and we still had Sinai, I'm dating myself, and you could drive there. And we drove on an old Egged bus and without air conditioning. And it kept going around the mountain and then another mountain. And then there was another mountain and another mountain, they're all purple mountain, very nice. When is this going to end? It doesn't end. It goes on and on and on and on. Right? There's no way to survive. But Hashem put us in a sukkah and surrounded us, and we did survive against impossible odds, which you couldn't even logically estimate, but somehow it happened. This is the message of the sukkah. L'man yedu doraseichem. Klal Yisrael will always have storms to weather, will always go through situations that survival seems impossible. And yet Hashem will put us in his sukkah and we will get through this. It's much like Noah put the animals in the teva. The teva and the sukkah have much in common. The sukkah sails through the storm with my father, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, who is interred here in Beit Shemesh. I went to visit him before Yom Kippur. And there's a little tree that grows out of his cave. It's the only one in the whole Beit Shemesh cemetery. This little beautiful, happy little tree. So beautiful, just like my dad. It's beautiful personality and wonderful Talmid Chacham, Chashva Mensch, a prince. And he used to sing a song called the Sukkah La Kleina, the little sukkah. And in Yiddish, he would sing it with great fervor every sukkahs, something from his childhood. And back in Baltimore in the 20s and 30s. And he used to say, the sukkah story is how an old man is sitting and the wind is blowing and it's cold. And then he took a little wood and he put together a little sukkah, a little fragile sukkah, and the wind is blowing and it's just howling. And it's a miracle that the candles don't blow out. And his daughter comes and offers him a bit of soup and says, Tatanu, the sukkah fal balt ein. The sukkah is going to collapse on you. And he says, Zainit Ginar, Hadnishkin Sar, don't trouble yourself. Right? This sukkah has been here for 2,000 years. And it's not falling anytime soon. This is Laman Yedu Dorisechem Ki Besukkos Hoshaftis B'nei Yisrael. The message of the sukkah is, we will get through. Hashem will take us through the storm. So this is a huge, huge message as we've been through 2 years of bitter storms. But we emerge. Like Loach would eventually open up the windows of the Teva, send out the Yonah and send out in search of peace, in search of the olive branch of peace. It will come. It will come. So that is point number 2. Now let's go to Bereshis for a moment and then into Noah. And with that, we'll be able to bring it home. What can we look forward to in this year? Well, there is no doubt that the drama of Hoshana Rabbah will continue. The world is abuzz about Israel and Gaza. It has been for 2 years. But now in a different way. They want to try solutions to bring peace. And every nation of the world has an opinion. Just ask the United Nations that voted that all of this area belongs to Palestine. There's only one problem. There's no people to give it to who aren't terrorists who just want to destroy Israel. So they've got a problem. They've got a big problem. But as they comprise this team to bring peace to Gaza, just remember one thing, that the next target is Yerushalayim. So if indeed the quote unquote international community comes together and imposes their will upon Gaza, which is that Israel should not have anything to do with it, and that the murderous terrorists be somewhat pushed back, but the other ones who support Sheker and terror, the remnants of those Amaleki voices prevail the day, just know that this was the testing ground. I predict that they'll say, well, it worked in Gaza, it's going to work on Har HaBayis. And they will come, as Gog and Magog predicts, which we read over Sukkos, they will come for Yerushalayim. Now, the good news is that Hashem is not going to allow them to have it. So we know the happy ending of the story. It doesn't mean it's any less traumatic or dramatic. So lesson number 1, takeaway from an incredible Tishrey. There will be victories. There will be miracles. The subjugation of Yishmael on Eretz Yisrael is the weakest it has ever been. And it will continue that way. But just as that continues, the last-ditch efforts of the nations of the world will intensify to such an extent that they will reach And not only as they reach always for Eretz Yisrael, but in particular for Yerushalayim, it's going to be interesting. And I don't think it's going to take a long time. And ultimately, we will weather the storm. We will come through the sukkah that Hashem said, L'man yidu derseichem. We will survive. We will go into the teva. We will have tzohar. Tzohar is the light, and or is light. In Bereshis, we said, Vayihi or. That was the or that Hashem put away for the tzaddikim, but that's the or that runs the world. That's the Torah itself. That's the blueprint for the world. But there's something else called the tzohar. The tzohar has the letters say or go out. Okay, go out. It's the light that illuminates itself. Rashi describes it as a precious stone, or perhaps a window, but it has its own light. Some Meforshim suggest that the chalon was during the day when there was more light, and so to speak, and then the tzohar is from the times of darkness, where we have the inner light shining forward. That's the light of the tzaddik, tzadike Hashem. Tzohar is the light of the tzaddikim of Hashem. That's what illuminates us now. That's what we're going to hold on to. That's what's coming out of the souls of these chatufim. You'll see an enormous light bursting forth, and they're going to reach for the light of the tzaddikim. They already are. And this is what will ultimately unify us and bring us to emunah. So that's what I predict. Prediction number 2 is that there will be an enormous reckoning, soul reckoning with emunah for the Jewish people in the land of Israel and around the world. In the land of Israel because of what we're experiencing, and around the world because of what they're experiencing, which will be dramatic and difficult. And it already is, with the loss of Rabbi Hauer, with the imminent election of Mamdani, the shadows over America, the violence in the synagogues, besides the rampant assimilation, besides the rampant rejection by our own people of Ahavas Yisrael, which stood them in good stead, where they supported Israel and supported Torah, and now they've become their most vocal critics. These dark shadows will spawn light, as one door closes, but another door opens. And but I just want to, we have some time. What I just want to move forward is with the concept of what we learned in Bereshis and what we learned in Noah. In Bereshis, there's a sad reality that Cain kills his brother Hevel in the initial episodes. Besides the tragic reality of what happened in the Eitz Hadas, the eating of the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but the Nachash emerges as the figure. But I would like to say the Nachash gets a bad rap. So here's a few words of sympathy for the Nachash. You ready? Maybe the Nachash wasn't such a bad guy after all. Was he a villain or was he a victim? So according to the Zohar Kadosh, what happens with the Nachash is that he really was victimized. Really, the Nachash wasn't a bad guy. His job was the technological director. He was the director of artificial intelligence for Adam Harishon. Medrash tells us that he had such wisdom, he'd go far and wide, and Adam would set him loose, and he would bring back gold and diamonds and silver. This is what the Zohar Kodesh says. He was tremendously brilliant, and he understood wealth and riches, and he was a loyal servant to Adam. But what went wrong? This is taken now from Pirkei Rabbi Elazar, Perek Yud Gimel. V'haya Samael Sar Hagadol Shebeshamayim. Unfortunately, the Satan, Hashem put him here so that we would have the choice for good and evil. You can't have a choice unless there's evil. So he created this minister of evil. Lakachas Akat Shalov Yarad. All his Gehenim Shamases, as my Bubby used to say, came with him. All his troublemakers. He says, the one who is the most cunning of all the animals, who would serve my purposes best, Because he's effective, he's intelligent, he's cunning, he's sly. He knows how to get things done, knows how to negotiate deals. He's better than Witkoff. He's better than, what's his name? Whoever's on the highway now. They think they have all the answers. Yeah, but they'll serve my purpose as well. V'haya demuso kamin gamal. He was almost like camel-like. Camel will take you anywhere you want, doesn't need much food or water. He's a great guy. Ve'olav v'rochav alav. And he said, let me use the Nachash as my tool. The Torah, the voice of truth, says, you wicked Samael, Achshav Nivra Olam. God just created the world. We're already starting problems. A person who is overtaken by a bad spirit. If a person has gone somewhat mad, they're in a state. They're in a moment of shtus, a moment of craziness, a moment of violence, an October 7th moment, where the devil rides on those hooligans, and all the Gehenim Shamases of the netherworld come and ride those vicious people. Very useful have the Hamas been to the Satan. If a person has temporary insanity, has gone mad, are they liable for what they say? He didn't really mean it, the Nachash. He wasn't really such a bad guy after all. He was just taken over by an evil spirit. Kacha Nachash, kol masav she'asa b'chol dvar she'diber, lo diber v'lo asa, Alamidato shel Samael. And the Meforshim explain here, there's an Abarbanel that describes what the Nachash was all about. The Satan came in the form of the Nachash, right? But what that is the voice of madness, which is the voice of sheker. It's a lie. Remember, the greatest lie is to distort reality. And the reality is that Hashem created the world, gave you a simple choice of Tov or Ra, and told you not to eat from the Eitz Hadas. And comes the Nachash and says, no, it's not true. Tries to present moral and mostly moral arguments and logical arguments why Hashem is to be morally vilified. He's trying to withhold from you good. It makes the moral case against you. You're immoral. Hashem is doing bad things to you, Chava. Hashem doesn't love you, Chava. And that's the ultimate distortion of reality, that Hashem has anything against us. Well, if Hashem hates us, then why should I love Hashem and listen to his mitzvahs? And that's the conversation. So that's what really happens. What really happens, and that voice is within us. Let me explain how. So you'll say, but Hashem destroyed Cain and Lamach and Tuval Cain, who killed. I mean, the stories of Bereshit require careful scrutiny, but the bottom line is, a terrible thing happened. The Nachash was taken over to such an extent that according to the Zohar Kadosh, the Nachash actually violated Chava and impregnated Chava. And there were 2 pregnancies that she carried, not twins, one from the Nachash and one from her husband Adam. One gave birth to Cain, son of the Nachash. One gave birth to Hebel, son of Adam Harishon. And now you can understand why Cain would kill Hebel, because the Nachash, the son's job, is to destroy man. And Medrash says, how did he know to kill him? It's Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kufchavs, and so on. He says, he bit him like a Nachash. He just bit him. He took the route that he was familiar with to bring death and destruction. And that's what Cain was all about. And that's why Cain eventually gets killed by his own progeny. And the Medrash says he was killed because Tuval Cain, his grandson, told Lamach, also his descendant, there were 7 generations between him and Tubal Cain who developed instruments. I can't give a whole shir about this. There's a whole shir to be given about this, but I'll just mention it in passing. That death and destruction came to the world because of Cain, because of the Satan, because of the Yetzer Hara. And it was wiped out by the Mabul, save one person. There was a daughter of Lamech, whose name was Naamah, and she was sweet and beautiful. And Noah said, her I can save. And he takes her for a wife. And she gives birth to 3 children, including Shem, Ham, and Yafes. Shem, our forefather of Avram Avinu and the Jewish people. There's always going to be, maybe very watered down, and maybe manageable even, for with Hashem's help, like Noah did, this voice of Cain, of the Satan inside of us, that we have to answer, that we have to be able to respond to and say, that's not a great idea. Lemon meringue pie, not a great idea. It tastes great, but it's not a great idea. It's MS, it tastes good, but it's not MS that is good for you. And that's the voices on a tiny level, and of course on a bigger level, that the world has to choose. That's how the Nachash survived. It wasn't really the Nachash, it was the Satan who used the Nachash's skills. And today, the most intelligent people, the most wealthy people, the most powerful people are being used by the Satan to call Ra against Hashem and the Jewish people. They're being used. They don't even know they're being used. They're not even aware of how much they're being used. They spout this stuff because, like the Nachash says, it's just this Ruach Ra that has encompassed them. They're waiting to be liberated by the Ruach Tov of the Chatufim, of Am Yisrael, of Klal Yisrael, and of Torah. The Or and the Tzohar together will reverse this. This is the breakthrough of Tafshin Pei Vav, the breakthrough of the Or HaEmes, so that the trance over the world can begin to dissipate. That is what's going to happen in Israel as more people awaken to their love of Hashem and their Amunah and Hashem and Tzaddikim. This is what was hopefully going to happen to the world. As Mr. Trump demonstrated, some people can get closer to the truth. Ironically, he calls this thing Truth Social. But again, he, to whatever extent, is Bigamatria Chatzi Mana Falafel. I told you that. We'll get a half good from him, but we still have to know to be strong and reject what he proposes, which is not good. And there's plenty of that, and it's arrived in Israel today. And we have to know, Hashem should give us Siyata D'Shmaya, that the bad plans should fall apart and whatever is good should emerge by itself. And that is ultimately, finally, Noah, by the way, Hashem didn't decide to destroy the world. He decided to destroy anything that lived on earth. What did Hashem not destroy? The fish. Why did he destroy the fish? What's wrong? Rashi brings 2 opinions. One is because the animals also sinned. They went with Einam. Notice, homosexuality is always identified together with Avodah Zarah and with Gezel, with stealing, because it's the break of any boundaries. When you break a boundary, it's sheker. What's yours is yours. What's not yours is not yours. It's the truth. And once you break that down, it's Hamas. Hamas, according to the Targum, is chatufin, people that steal. That's the Targum of the word Hamas. Ki vasimaleh haaretz Hamas. And it's not the newspaper haaretz, but it's that too. Maleh Hamas. It's theft. It's stealing what's not rightfully yours and giving it to those who don't deserve it, don't earn it, and don't belong to it. So Hashem did not touch the fish because the fish didn't participate in this. But I would go one step deeper. Why did the animals do that crazy thing of going to Einam Minam? What happened to the animals? The animals don't know any better. The answer is because Adam HaRishon was created on the same day as the animals and from the same essential basis. The birds are very interesting because they start in the water, but they end up on the earth. So they're included in the Gzera because primarily birds live on earth. They don't really survive in the sea as they maybe once did many, many years ago. But any earthbound creature is connected. Hashem created all the animals, even the mosquitoes, and then he created man because we are part of them. We're just the enhanced behema, chatzi behema, chatzi neshama. So when man sins, he drags everything down with him, and therefore the animals follow suit. And I think this was even documented once off the course of San Francisco, that they notice unusual behavior in the animals of niskakim le'enam minam, as if to say, man rules, man sets the way. He can be stronger than anybody, but at the same time, redu is lashon yared. He can also descend lower than anyone. So man dragged the animal kingdom down, right? And that's why they were all destroyed, but not the fish, because fish are essentially mayim. They're made from mayim. There was recently a daf yomi which says you can be tovel in the eye of a whale because it's essentially water. It's from the water. It is water. Man has a responsibility to lift everybody up. And that's another hopeful theme for this year. Hopefully the passing of such great people like Rabbi Hauer, such as the Chatufim that passed away, that hopefully be reclaimed. And whatever tragedies we've suffered in the last 2 years, will be put behind us. Tafshin Pei Vav, emergence of freedom. When Yosef comes out of prison, he rises to world prominence immediately. And he says, Biladai, it's all because of Hashem. This is the job of the Jewish people in this year, to proclaim like Yosef did when he got out of jail. Biladai, it's not about me. It's about the glory of Hashem, his Torah, his tzaddikim, and the light of Emes, which is at pitched fever battle with Sheker. The pitched fever, Charlie Kirk, Nebuch, who was so horribly murdered, said to Donald Trump right before he passed away, said to Netanyahu before he passed away, before he was killed, murdered, he said, you're losing the war of opinion. You're losing the war. You're not fighting the war of truth. So another theme, we have to fight the war for truth. The truth words, the words of truth have to come out in this year. So again, massive Tafshin Pei Vav. Yes, victories over our enemies which wish to take our land from us, but the forces b'chutz la'aretz are troubling and strong. And the second thing is that the emergence of awareness, Hashem awareness and Emunah in Eretz Yisrael and around the world. And the third thing is the voice of truth. That truth should emerge, and that what is righteous should be called righteous, what is tzaddik should be called tzaddik, and what is ra should be called ra, and not the vice versa. And with these blessings, we'll go into a new year. We survived, we thrive, and with Hashem, we continue to grow even more achud, more together, more loving each other, more connected to Hashem, more connected to Torah than ever before. And with this, we shall triumph and prevail in a year of wonder and miracles.
Shir Chadasha